You're listening to an archived Cabral Concept podcast. After listening to this show, check out the most up-to-date podcasts available at stephencabral.com/podcasts or search directly on iTunes. And now, welcome to the Cabral Concept, where board-certified naturopath and integrative health practitioner Dr. Stephen Cabral shares how he was diagnosed at the age of 17 with a life-altering illness and given no hope for recovery. It was only after studying and traveling all over the world did he discover how to combine ancient Ayurvedic healing practices with state-of-the-art naturopathic and functional medicine to fully rebalance the body and re-energize it with life. It's time to discover how to get well, lose weight, and finally feel alive again. And now, here's your host, Dr. Stephen Cabral.
Thanks so much for joining me today on our Training Thursday show, where we are going to go over how to injury-proof your joints and body. Such an important topic because there's a lot of people out there, just like, you know, when you have an autoimmune issue or you get skin rashes or adult acne, you get psoriasis, you get eczema, you get any of these things, right? Any of these things. Same goes with your joints. Same goes through with muscle tears and aches and pains, is that what happens is there are signs before you actually get the injury or the dis-ease that you could have looked at. You could have heeded, and I want to share a story about that today, but I also want to give you, let's say that you were injured in the past or you don't want to get injured now because you want to keep these joints safe. You don't want to have joint replacements when you're older. You don't want to go through the aches and pains in your 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, and beyond, right? You want to live that long, healthy life, but you also want to live it with a great quality of life, which means reduced pain or no pain at all. That really is possible. I work with many, many clients who live that life, and that's what I want for you as well. So what I want to do is I want to share with you a really simple formula that I've been using myself for, let's see, about 10 years, I would say, without a doubt. And then I've been sharing with clients for much, much longer. Like you can see, like, why would I share it with my clients longer than myself? Well, I'm a little bit more stubborn sometimes in my own ways than I know that I even should be. And one of the things that I can actually share, and you'll learn a little bit more about my past history with my stubbornness, is that right before I got sick, and many of you know my story of getting, really ill with a mystery-based illness when I was 17, but right before that, so let's say I was 17 and a half when I got sick, right? Because my birthday's in March, I got sick right around the November area or so, that fall. Well, in September, going into my senior year of high school, I was going into my senior year. I played 3 sports when I was in high school, really enjoyed overall the camaraderie, but one in particular, we did really well, and that was cross country during the fall. I ran cross country, and we had just won the state championship in our division last year, and so we were all super excited. We had a lot of people returning for my senior year, and we're like, okay, well, we're all competitive guys. We're like, we're going to win again. We're going to beat this school and this school, just really, really macho competitive. And so what we started to do is myself and one of the other captains of the team, we held captain's practices during the summer. And it seemed like a great idea because the coach wasn't allowed to hold a practice, not for high school athletes, but the captains of the team could. So I said, hey, let's just hold some captain practices. And so we did extra running during the summer, where usually most teams and most people, myself included, would take the summer off. You would take off whatever it was because, let's say you end sports in the spring in May, June. Well, you'd take off June, July, August, and so you'd be 3 months kind of deconditioned or less conditioned as a high school athlete. So we said, okay, we're going to keep our training going, and that's exactly what we did, and we entered that fall, really ramped up. We were going to have a great season. All of us were in our, what we thought, best shape ever, but what happened was very, very quickly, us going from a high of believing that we're going to repeat as state champions to a low. Within the first month of the season, myself and 2 other of the top 5 runners got injured. And that was literally within the first month. And I was not the best person on that team. I was not the top runner. But when you lose essentially 3 of your top 5, it's not looking good because in cross country, you're taking the top 3 to 5 positions, depending on the league that you're in. At least it was when I was back in high school. So, really quickly, our hopes of winning that state champion and being state champions again went down the drain, and I tore my Achilles, and other people just had nagging injuries, whether it be hamstrings or shins or, whatever it might be. And it was too bad, but I'll tell you, it taught me a lot. And the reason that I got injured was a direct result of my overtraining. I didn't know back then. How many people know when they're 16, 17 years old, whether you're doing heavy weight training, whether it's football season or whatever, and just trying to max out like every single time? Unless you have a really good coach or athletic director who's taking you through these programs or athletic trainer, if you're at a really big high school, right? One of the, the big high schools in anywhere in the world, which I was not at, that you wouldn't have a proper program. So we just thought, well, the more the better. And so I was running 5 days a week, and I was probably putting, I don't even know how many miles I was doing per week, but it was a good amount. It really was, because in cross country, you're running essentially a 5K, a 3.1 mile race for most of your events. And so I would train obviously much more than that, so that the 3.1 miles felt really easy. Well, what happened was this: through the end of the summer and definitely through September when I started the season, I had massive shin splints, like so bad that I couldn't what's called dorsiflex or plantar flex my foot. It was just kind of stuck in that 90-degree position, meaning the shins, right? Your shin bone, there's an actual muscle there called the anterior tibialis. And that muscle was literally becoming detached from the bone, or at least there was massive micro tears. And I had massive inflammation. I wasn't able to properly, like I said, plantar flex, dorsiflex that ankle up and down. So when I ran, I was literally running flat-footed, and that just compounded it. I started getting hamstring-based issues, super tight hamstrings. Since I had no flexibility in the calves and I had no mobility in the ankle, what eventually happened was my Achilles took more of the brunt every time I landed when I ran. And I essentially, the heel cord of the bottom of the Achilles, the calcaneus, which is the heel, it didn't become detached, but it actually split up the middle of my Achilles, which was painful, but it was brutal. It was more painful because I couldn't run anymore. And I felt like I let my team down. I was the one who was saying, hey, let's do captain's practices, which is pretty normal in high school. And I had the best intentions that I wanted our team to do well, but I was nowhere qualified at 16 years old, 17 years old to say, hey, this is what we should be doing for running. It was just like, hey, let's just do more running, right? It's kind of like with any sport, you just do more of it unless you're professionally trained. And so, it's one of those things that I learned from. I think I'm pretty stubborn, meaning that I learn more from my failures than I do successes. And I definitely learn more from my mistakes than other people's mistakes. And a lot of people are like that. I'm just trying to hope that with this podcast and other podcasts that you listen to, that you can learn from the podcast speaker, whatever you call a podcast speaker. You can learn from the doctor, you can learn from friends, you can learn from whoever it might be, so that you are not destined to repeat those same mistakes of the past. So that's also why I got such, big into book reading, because I just knew that, hey, if I'm going to speed up this process of healing my body when I did get sick, that I was going to have to learn from other people's mistakes at a much, much faster rate. And I was going to have to follow someone else's blueprint, meaning that when I got injured, it took me a long time to rehab my Achilles. And essentially doctors said, well, that's it. You're not going to play basketball during the fall. Really going to be a challenge for you to do track and field in the spring. You should just really work on getting yourself healthy. And then I got sick again a couple months later. It's kind of a perfect storm. When I talk about the rain barrel effect, well, I was stressed out from not being able to compete anymore in sports. I was also injured. That pain was causing my rain barrel to overflow. The stress of moving away to school and just 6 months or 8 months, whatever it was, of all those things in high school, right? I was working a job at the time, like so many different things. And that, of course, totally burnt me out. That and the 3,000 antibiotics I had been put on for the past 3 years. So it was a mixture of everything, and it always is. It's hardly ever one specific thing, although that is possible. I'm just such a big believer that all of these things just accumulate and accumulate and accumulate. And that's when genetics, age, predisposition, nutrition, like all those things add up, meaning well, you're either susceptible or you're susceptible in another few months or another few years. Again, it just depends on how strong that constitution is at the time. But let me get back on track to how to bulletproof your body. So knowing that I destroyed not that I was going to go professional in anything. I'm not saying that at all. I doubt I even would have been a college athlete. I was a good varsity athlete in high school, but not good enough to be an athlete in college at a collegiate level. I was just good at sports, not great at sports, that's for sure. So that was never going to be my path. I realized that obviously, pretty early on. And so what I looked at was this, all right, what else can I get into? And I got into weight training. I had my share of injuries there as well until I learned, right? So now how do I help other people not to make those same mistakes? Well, here's what I do is I concentrate on what I did for rehab, knowing that I had to rehab my Achilles. I also tore my bicep when I was 21 years old, just doing natural bodybuilding, trying to get enormous, all of those things. Again, I was your prototypical, macho type guy all the way through, I would say my mid 20s. And I've kind of allowed that to go away, which is nice. I have to just keep pushing it down every once in a while. Every time I think about, I want to put on another 20 pounds of muscle, I'm like, You don't need to do that. All right. Step back, calm down. And so that's what I tell myself, because with that comes additional protein that I would need to eat, which would be tough on my kidneys and my body as a whole. I would need to train harder and heavier, which would be harder on my joints, like all of those things. Now I'm in it for the long haul. I want to be in great shape. There's no doubt about that, but I don't need to push it to the highest level. So back to the whole topic of today is I learned, though, during my rehabilitation of my Achilles, my rehabilitation of my bicep, and also of my shoulder when I partially tore my rotator cuff, how to rehab those. So what I did was I created a prehab program, meaning that I now teach private clients, and I'm teaching you right now, how I prevent myself and now others from getting injured in the first place. Because what we do is we do prehab so that we don't ever have to get into rehab, because we don't want to injure the body. And the rehabilitation is how you get your body better. And usually it focuses on strengthening the small stabilizing muscles and working on really good joint mobility and flexibility, as well as being properly warmed up. I never warmed up with weightlifting previously, and I never warmed up before a run. Sure, we would do some stretches, but stretching before a run is not what you're supposed to do for a warm up, as you're about to learn. Like, that's not the best thing for a run. Like, what does running have to do with stretching? Like, you need to warm up your body. That's how you get to get warmed up. So let me share with you right now. It's not going to be long, but I'm going to share with you. Essentially, it's 5 steps. My prehab before a workout is 5 steps. And this goes for, I would say, any. Honestly, it's for a CrossFit, a boot camp, a weightlifting session, a home exercise session. It could be going out for a run. So here's what we want to do. We want to start with a general warm-up. And not too many people really know the difference between a general warm-up and a dynamic warm-up. I know a lot of the personal trainers out there who are NASM or NSCA or ACSM or one of the other great certifications will certainly know this, but a general warm-up means warming up your body. Okay, it can literally be like old school calisthenics if you want, which would be like jumpy jacks and high knees and butt kicks. Like, those are all great. So you can totally do that. Or even a more general would literally be going for a walk, like a walk on a treadmill, or a light jog for 3 minutes to 5 minutes. You just want to build heat within the body and just generally warm up. So you can do any sorts of things. Like, another general warm up I like to do is neurological base, and that's hip swings. So literally you swing your leg back, you swing it forward in the sagittal plane, so forward and back, and then the frontal plane, which is just in front of the body, side to side, like a pendulum. You can look all these up on YouTube, and you can just look up hip swings on YouTube. Super simple to do, right? So that would be more general, and it warms up, gets the body warm. It makes the muscles more supple. It makes them more pliable. And honestly, it adds more flexibility than you can get if you just did a cold stretch. Now we want to get into part 2, which is the dynamic warm-up. This is now specific. Okay, a specific warm-up means, what are you doing for that day's workout? If you're doing a spin class, well, what would you want to do? Well, you'd want to warm up your psoas muscles, your hip flexors, right? You'd want to warm up the TFL. You'd want to warm up your IT band. You might do some lunges. You might, you'll do different things for those muscles. Now, if it's the overall weight training based workout or body weight workout, you'll want to warm up the whole body. And that's typically what I always do no matter what. So you'll want to warm up all of the joints as well. And that means the shoulder joints by doing something like a plank with a little bit of a T-twist rotation. Might be a plank with one arm reach outs. It could be transverse plane lunges, backwards lunges. It could even be something like burpees or mountain climbers, anything like that. Although I consider a mountain climber more of a general base warm up, although it is kind of getting the body cranking, for sure. And actually would help with the spin class for sure. But what you'll want to look at is, okay, is it a full body workout? Okay, then warm up the whole body. Super simple, right? Hand walkouts, great exercise to do. Backwards lunges, love doing those. Stick overhead squats. And again, if these are unfamiliar territory for you, write them down and then type it into YouTube. I'm guaranteeing you're going to find a good demonstration video. The tough thing on YouTube is it a good demonstration or not? So just look for someone obviously reliable there as well with really good technique, good form. So super simple. What you're doing, what dynamic warm-up means is that you're going to want to warm up the body for how it has to perform for that given workout, okay? If it's a running exercise, yes, you'll be doing a run. You still want to warm up your upper body because there's trunk rotation, meaning that your body's fighting that rotation the whole time. So you'll still want to do a plank and maybe some glute activation like a bridge for sure when you're doing running. But you might do more specific things like ankle mobility. You might do ankle circles to warm up those ankles. That's something I would do, right? And if you're doing some chest work that day, some chest presses, I would do some rotator cuff warm-ups like some internal and external band rotation. And again, I'm just giving you examples. The goal is to understand the major concepts with the Cabral Concept Podcast and then begin to dive deeper and implement those, okay? So number 3 is this. Whatever you do for your workout, you want to warm up into it now very specifically. So we have a general warm-up, we have a dynamic warm-up, which we just talked about, and then we have a very specific warm-up, which means, let's just say it is a chest press. Let's stay with that. Let's say you're doing a dumbbell chest press. Okay, so you're going to sit on the ball, you're going to grab your 2 dumbbells, you're going to roll out, and you're going to bring the dumbbells towards your chest, and you're going to press up and then come down. Well, that's a dumbbell chest press on the ball. Great. What would you do for a very specific warm-up? Well, let's say you're doing 3 sets of that for the day. Your first set may only be 50 to 60% of the max weight that you can lift. So it's a light weight, not totally irrelevant, like you still have to challenge your body, but it's certainly not anywhere near your max. Why would you do that? Well, very simple. You want to wake up your nervous system. You want to train that neurological pathway for the first time that day, and you want to make the muscles more pliable in that very specific range of motion. This will help you so much in the long run, because what am I talking about? Not just the muscles, but the joints. What's working during a chest press? Your shoulder, your rotator cuff, and your elbow. Those are the 2 main joints. You want to warm those up. You don't want to overstretch your chest and shoulders right away. That's what can lead to the rotator cuff-based damage, okay? Really important that you warm that up specifically, which means if you're doing 3 sets, start at 50 to 60% of your finishing weight. Really simple. So it might look at, if you're ending with 40 pounds for a dumbbell chest press, well, start with 25 pounds. Super simple. You can do that. And then you can go the next set to 35 pounds, and then the third set you would go to 40 pounds, right? Very, very easy. Let's say you're doing 20 pounds, okay? You're doing lighter weight. Start with 12 pounds, then go to 15 to 17 and a half, and then do 20. You can just ramp your way up. Again, if you're a more seasoned exerciser, you might be able to do, in that 40-pound example, you might be able to do a set of 30 and then 2 sets of 40. But no matter what, you should warm up with a lighter weight of the same exact exercise you're doing. Now, what if you're going for a run? Well, I've talked about this before with interval-based training. Okay, let's say it's intervals. You're doing 8 intervals for the day. Your first interval is at 50% of your full speed. The second one, about 75 to 80%. And then the third one, okay, now you can get to 100%. You might even want to do one more. We do this with athletes all the time. Why? Because an athlete can't get injured because it takes them out of their sport, which means they either lose money, lose their paycheck, lose their contract, whatever, or lose their scholarship in college, which we work with university athletes as well. For you, you get injured, you take yourself out of the game. You might gain back 10 pounds, 20 pounds. You might just really lose your ambition and drive. Plus, you're in pain. So we don't want that for you either. Like, it's not good for anybody. So follow these examples, and they're really going to help you out. Same with the spin class. If the instructor is saying, we got to dive right into it today, no. Just go at your own pace. You can pretend like you're going faster. Warm your body up over 5 minutes, and then you can start to get into it. That's the smart way to do it. That was number 3. General warm-up, dynamic warm-up, very specific warm-up with that exercise. Okay, now number 4 is this. I make sure to push hard, but not to failure until my 3rd, 4th, or 5th week of the program. So it really depends on how many weeks of the program you're going to do. For example, in our body transformation studio in Boston, not our functional medicine, but body transformation studio, we work with clients, and typically their programs are 4 weeks. If it's strength-based or their goals are different, it might go to 6 weeks. But most people, it's 4 weeks on the button. We do the workout 4 times and we switch it up. So every week we're ramping up, and by the 4th week, it's a max-out week. We're saying they already know how to do the exercise. Their nervous system is primed for exactly how to do it, and we push them to their limit, but not with poor form, okay? You can never compromise form. So if we see the form is perfect, they're not going to get injured. So what we do is we push them to their limit. If the goal is to hit 10 reps of that exercise, on that last set, we don't push them on the first set to failure, because remember, we're following our specific warm-up. But on that last set, we push them to failure. We make sure that we're using a weight that challenges them to fail by 9 or 10 if they're going for 10 reps. We don't want 11th in the tank. But we don't do that every week of their program, because every week of your program is not meant to be a max out Herculean effort. That's how people get injured. It really is. Did I do that myself from 18 years old when I started getting into weightlifting because I wanted to transform my body and I couldn't really do sports anymore because of my torn Achilles? Yes, of course I did. And then I ended up with a torn bicep, and I ended up with a rotator cuff tear. So I'm just trying to be smart about it now. I mean, I can't think of an injury that I've gotten. I've gotten tight muscles and things like that, nagging things every once in a while, for sure. Like, that's just part of being active for the past 20 years or so. I mean, that's part of the game, but never injured, never having to take any time off. And most of my clients can say exactly the same. Now, can a freak accident happen? Absolutely. And it could be totally out of your control. Things like that happen. Like, it's not really an issue. Actually, I remember, well, this is still 24 years old. I'm working in a big gym, and I hurt my lower back. doing something stupid, like not on purpose. I just bent down, grabbed a plate off the rack, but I twisted the wrong way. It was just, again, a freak accident. But again, knew how to rehab it and was better within about 72 hours instead of a couple weeks. So, and again, I get coached through these things. So when I was learning rehab, I was learning from great chiropractors who taught me things like active release technique, prehabilitation, working with bands. Everything I've learned from other people. There's a few things that I've kind of come up on my own, but how did I come up with them? Based on previous knowledge. Like it didn't hit me in a dream, like I've learned all of these things that I've come up with. It's based on me pulling things together. So I might have my own system, but it's still based on all of this knowledge that I've accumulated from all of these great coaches and mentors. I want to share the fifth one with you right now. It's after my workout, even though I do not enjoy doing it. All right. After my workout, I make sure to foam roll the tight areas that I need to. It's called self-myofascial release foam rolling. I've done podcasts on it. So just type in foam roller or foam roll at stephencabral.com/podcast. I'll try to link that up if I can today, but just go to stephencabral.com/podcast. Today's episode 790. Remember, 790 podcasts worth of information. You can use the search bar to type in any keyword you'd like. Find previous podcasts on that. Okay, so here's the deal as well. What I do is I foam roll anything that's tight, but I also then at the very, very end, I do a stretch. My 5 floor stretches, I've talked about this before, probably done a podcast on that as well. I don't even remember. My 5 floor stretches, what do? Well, of course, they benefit me from lengthening those tight muscles that I just worked. But the bigger benefit that I realized, and I did not realize this until about maybe 6 years ago, that it calms the sympathetic nervous system. Like I'm the type of person, you probably know this, but I get amped up, I get intense. Over the years, I've found ways to literally, I hate the word hack, but I've hacked the system so that I can turn on my parasympathetic nervous system. When I stretch, I close my eyes. I might be listening to my headphones or not. I close my eyes. I'm breathing in through my nose and out through my mouth. It's basically a meditative-based practice, and I'm relaxing into the stretch. That brings my heart rate down, it calms my nervous system, and it helps immediately begin to heal the muscles, begin to heal the joints. Because remember, your ligaments, your tendons, all of those things get worked during the workout. This is what has kept my body healthy for the past 20 plus years since I started weightlifting. And I know that it's going to do the same for you. What's the whole point of this? The whole point of this is to stay in the game. I really do want to be working with my own body weight or with resistance or both and being active, doing sprint triathlons maybe as well when I'm 80 plus years old. I really do. Like I think that that's a great goal for people. You keep yourself healthy. But here's the bigger benefit. Even if you don't care about how your body moves, by exercising, it leads to better overall immune support. It leads to better overall longevity. I mean, all of these things have been shown. Your body thinks it's younger if it's doing these manual labor type things, as long as you're not overdoing it. If you use this simple 5-step system, I believe you're going to keep yourself healthy. It only takes 5 more minutes per workout maximum to get in these warm-ups because you're just doing a lighter warm-up set and then a little stretching after the workout. And that's just good because it gets you a little bit of that 5-minute meditative practice. I'm not talking about stretching for 20 minutes. It would be great. I would love you to stretch for 20 minutes after your workout. But even if you can only get in 1 minute per stretch and do 5 floor stretches, I think that would be absolutely tremendous. If I haven't done a podcast on the 5 floor stretches, type in floor stretch at stephencabral.com/podcast. See if I've done that episode. And if I haven't, I'm going to do the same. I will do an episode on those stretches that I recommend. Thank you so much for tuning into today's show. Always a great time being able to bring you some of this exercise physiology-based work that we do here in Boston and try to share all over the world. Really appreciate each and every one of your listens. And as always, if this episode could help anyone, please do feel free to share it along to them. Take care. Ever wonder what the best sauna, blue blockers, sleep trackers, wake lights, salt lamps, or other health gadgets are? Or what about the top non-toxic mattresses, sheets, soaps, bath products, toothpaste, and cookware? Or would you like to know the cleanest choices for hemp parts, meal delivery services, supplements, and much more? I personally curated, researched, and now created a resource page of all of my top picks that continues to grow each week. These are the exact products I use in my own life, with my family, in my private practice, and they're the ones I trust. To find out all of my up-to-date recommendations and all the details, simply head on over to stephencabral.com/resources.